It's one thing to mess up a product launch, every big name stumbles sooner or later. But what Meghan Markle just did in her so-called businesswoman era is on another level of chaos. First, there's the jam war. Should we call it a tomato? Paste look-alike that nobody really asked for. Then comes the overhyped show that tanked in under a week, leaving barely a ripple. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, she sits down for a Bloomberg interview meant to scream CEO power, but instead turns into a crash course in how not to do PR. And the funniest twist, she thinks we're the problem, not the product, not the flop. Not the spin just us. That Bloomberg piece was supposed to be her crown jewel. The headline promised, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, on life and business beyond the royal spotlight. Sounds like hard-earned wisdom from a fearless entrepreneur, right? Wrong. What we actually got was a recycled dish soap story from her childhood, a random rant about pantyhose, and an unconvincing attempt to pass as relatable business talk. Nowhere to be found. Instead, it was fluff stacked on fluff, and the entire thing fell apart faster than her Netflix ratings. This was her big chance to plant a flag in the business world. But she came empty-handed. No numbers, no strategy, no real plan, just vague claims about going from a few thousand units to 1 million without ever explaining how. And then came the kicker, pretending that pricing jam at $9 a jar was some groundbreaking genius move. $9 for ketchup in disguise, with no demand and no visibility. That's not innovation. That's pure delusion, dressed up with royal branding, not like jam, not even close. That's not innovation. That's delusion with a shipping fee. But hang on, because it gets even messier. Meghan Markle didn't just toss out one product. She dropped her with love. Meghan's show, that Bloomberg interview, and a new product wave all on the exact same day. Instead of slowly building hype, teasing the launch, and spacing media coverage for maximum visibility, she piled everything into one chaotic PR avalanche. Why? Some say it was a distraction stunt, a desperate attempt to bury the avalanche of negative reviews flooding in about her show. And honestly, that explanation makes more sense than anything she mumbled in that interview. Flood the internet, blur the headlines, and maybe, just maybe, people won't notice that her jam isn't jam. And her show is anything but binge-worthy. But here's the kicker. Even with that overkill PR circus, it still tanked. The show bombed, reviews shredded it to pieces, and her weak attempt to spin it as people loved it because we know our audience just came across as sad denial. It wasn't bold, it wasn't defiant, it was Meghan versus reality, pretending. Nielsen ratings and Rotten Tomatoes are just jealous haters hustling for clicks. Newsflash, sis. No one's whipping up your one skillet pasta recipe while secretly plotting bad reviews. They're just not watching. Your one skillet pasta recipe isn't tanking your show. Meghan, people just aren't watching, and that's the real problem. And then comes her favorite monologue. I'm a real person. Instead of owning up to why the public sees her the way they do, she pins it all on a fake caricature the media supposedly created. According to her, it's not Meghan Markle getting. Criticize this imaginary version of her. Forget the Oprah interview. Forget the Netflix doc. Forget the actual lies she admitted to in court. None of that counts, apparently. We're just expected to wipe the slate clean and pretend she never said or did any of it. That's like watching someone crash a car and then blame the rearview mirror for showing the wreck. And this is where the contradictions pile up. On one hand, she clings to the Duchess title, flashing the royal branding, using the gravitas that comes with the crown whenever it boosts her products and interviews. But on the other hand, she desperately wants to play the cool mom, a relatable entrepreneur who just happens to be casually running a brand out of Montecito. So when she's asked point blank if being a duchess makes it harder to connect with everyday people, she waves it off like it's the dumbest question in the world. But come on, of course it does. You can't juggle private chefs, stylists, and a royal title while selling yourself as the girl next door. That's not relatability, it's royal cosplay with a side of PR spin. But come on, of course it does. That's not an insult. That's just cold reality. The lifestyle gap is massive. Normal people can't relate to private chefs, stylists, publicists, and live-in staff. They're not bouncing from glossy magazine spreads to polished interviews, bragging about authenticity, while dodging accountability, pretending all that privilege doesn't shape how people see you. That's not just tone deaf, it's straight up insulting to anyone out here sweating over rent. And then to top it off, your big relatable story is a dish soap campaign from the 90s. Like that's your origin myth. Please, and then we get to the Jamor, as she loves to brand it, her hero product. Let's really unpack this mess. Meghan Markle spent over a year teasing it, dropping cryptic posts, showing mysterious jars, trying to build suspense. The hype machine was running nonstop. But after all that noise, what finally hit shelves? A runny, watery spread with sloppy labeling that couldn't even pass the basic test of being called jam. Sure, people bought it, but not because they actually wanted it. It was journalists, influencers, and commentators snapping it up just to review and roast it. The buzz wasn't real demand, it was morbid curiosity. Exactly that so-called initial rush wasn't genuine demand. It was pure media noise. Curiosity clicks, not loyal customers. And now that the novelty has evaporated, sales are stalling. That's why you won't find real numbers anywhere. But in the interview, when she's pressed about sales, Meghan doesn't give transparency, dodges. Then suddenly, she tosses out this casual claim that they went from a few thousand units to a million. A million. What exactly units produced? Jars labeled. Instagram impressions. Because unless she's hiding a warehouse stacked floor to ceiling with unsold jam, those numbers don't pass the smell test, especially when actual reviews are calling the product mediocre at best. More like glorified ketchup in a fancy jar than a $9 luxury spread. If you're going to slap a royal name and an Instagram filter on something, fine, but don't expect people to swallow the markup without substance. And here's the kicker. Meghan's entire brand has been built on this image of integrity, advocacy, and speaking truth to power. She and Harry went on record blasting social media platforms, specifically accusing them of neglecting fact-checking, fueling disinformation, and damaging children's mental health. They made themselves the moral crusaders against big tech. But now, there she is, back on Instagram, smiling in branded posts, leveraging the exact same platform she once condemned, because suddenly it's a convenient marketplace for her products. So which one is it? Are these platforms dangerous to society, or are they perfectly fine when they're padding your bottom line? That contradiction doesn't just undercut her credibility, it exposes the entire act. Do you want me to punch this up into a short, viral-style script, like for a TikTok or YouTube brand? Or keep building it as a long-form breakdown article? Exactly, that's the real collapse of the Meghan Markle PR machine. There's no through line, no core values, just whichever angle fits the narrative of the day. Duchess when it's glamorous, entrepreneur when it's profitable, influencer when it's convenient. But none of it adds up. And people aren't rejecting her because they can't handle a successful woman. They're rejecting her because the whole performance doesn't feel authentic and that I'm a real person line. That was supposed to be her mic drop moment. Instead, it landed flat. She's used it before and she used it again here as if simply reminding us she exists in flesh and blood should wipe away contradictions, hypocrisy, and PR blunders. But being real isn't the same as being relatable. And it definitely isn't the same as being right. This was the stage Bloomberg, a business audience, cameras rolling. A golden opportunity to own her narrative, admit past missteps, show actual growth. One moment of accountability would have shifted the entire tone. Instead, she leaned into denial, doubling down on the act. And in doing so, she confirmed what critics have been saying all along: Meghan doesn't have a branding problem. She has a credibility problem. Do you want me to expand this into a polished 3-part closing monologue, perfect for a viral video ending? Or keep it as a tight article style? Critique. Exactly this is the heart of why Meghan's businesswoman era feels like smoke and mirrors. She had every chance to lean into honesty, to admit the obvious truth. Things haven't gone smoothly. The jam flopped, the show tanked, and the brand strategy misfired. Owning that would have been powerful, even refreshing. But instead, she defaulted back to the script victimhood, blame shifting, and the same tired claim that the world just doesn't understand her. That only works if your past doesn't contradict you. But Meghan's track record: court apologies, contradictions, and timelines. Weaponized interviews makes it clear this isn't about misrepresentation, it's about accountability. And that's what she and Harry consistently run from. Their entire brand was built on their truth, but the second that truth is challenged, the story flips. Suddenly, criticism equals cruelty, skepticism equals jealousy, pushback equals hate. It's never the business model, the lies, or the choices. It's always someone else: the press, the royals, the public, the patriarchy, anyone but themselves. But people remember. They remember the Oprah inconsistencies. They remember how